currently law, policy, and regulation is in a transitional period to try to find ways to adapt and adopt connected and automated vehicles and other new mobility concepts. In some ways, the law is flexible and able to adapt to these new things pretty easily. And in other ways, policies and regulations have to be changed to include new vehicles and new mobility concepts into the definition of what is a vehicle. You know, obviously, like the government funds the development of a lot of new technologies. Automated vehicles themselves, mostly, or at least the most current generation of them, came out of Defense Department funding back in the 90s and the 2000s. I mean, the government has a huge hand in this, but there's a very strong feeling within governments across the board that they don't want to pick the winners. They don't want to write a law today that says X type of automated vehicle is the type we're going to use into the future, because then you stifle innovation. It means new companies can't break into markets. So there's this really hard balancing point of the government across, from little local governments and state governments to the federal government want to regulate. They want to keep people safe. They want to encourage companies to invest in this technology, which means they can't create very rigid set regulations or laws just yet, because we don't actually know what the technology is going to look like. So in the next few years, I see mobility moving in several directions. One is in obviously automation, which is not just automated vehicles in the sense of like a taxi that drives itself, although I do think those are coming. I don't think they're coming as quickly as some people would say, especially knowing how slow regulation and legal changes can take. There's a lot of interesting governments across the country to get these things off the ground and on the road, but it takes time. It takes time to develop the technology. So I think I always tell my friends, within a few years, you'll probably be able to take an automated taxi in a few major cities on limited routes, or maybe the tram you take from the airport to the parking lot at the airport will be automated. The things that are limited and they're easy to regulate, those are going to come first. We're also seeing the explosion of things like e-scooters and bike shares and giving access to quick last mile, first mile solutions. I hope those sustain themselves. I think they're very useful. I personally like using e-scooters. It's fun. It's really easy to get around. But so those kinds of things are easier to integrate into a city, a little easier to regulate. I mean, even Ann Arbor had some issues regulating them, and every city kind of does, but they're slowly figuring them out. And they don't take up the same real estate as like a docked bike, because like docked bikes are great, but they take a lot of like, okay, so where are we going to put them? How do we regulate where you can put them? It starts to layer complications. I think farther out, my hope is mobility is going to just continue to increase. My hope would be that we invest in greater mass transit, and especially through automation, if you can have more buses on the road, or you can have more access to on-demand travel for people with disabilities or the elderly or children, giving more access, opening up the world to more and more people is one of the best things that automation could do for us. Same with connected vehicles. Safety comes first. The more vehicles can talk to each other, the more vehicles can talk to the infrastructure around them, the safer people are going to be. And those all require lots of government regulation, but also lots of government interaction, state governments and county governments and the federal government all talking and working together to try to figure out the common language that vehicles will talk with each other in, and the way that we can try to gain all these safety, the promise that like 94% of accidents are caused by humans, and that we'll get rid of all of those. I don't think we can get rid of all of those, but certainly we can, over the course of the next 10, 15, 20 years, we can really shift the way we move around the world, make it safer, more equitable, and hopefully, really improve. And, you can get environmental improvement and other things like that.